Association, wherever it's pertinent, it's really important that you share what you learned today with others. There's several tables as you came in, and they'll be there as you leave as well. There's information on the ComEd energy efficiency programs. There's information on Faith in Place and the marvelous work that's being done there in encouraging clean energy. And we have a coalition in DuPage County called the DCEC, the DuPage Clean Energy Coalition. And we have postcard campaigns and a lot of marvelous information to share with you on getting involved in your community to encourage clean energy. And I forgot to mention, not just your worship house, your work, and your residence, your municipality is equally important. And there are task force in many of the DuPage County municipalities that we would be happy to hook you up with. So we hope you'll talk to one of us. Vera is here, and Jeff Garris is in the back. Laura Hewell is here. So there's a number of us who have been active in that effort that will be happy to chat with you more later. So we have a marvelous program. Our first speaker here is going to be introduced by Vera Miller, so I'll let her come up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vera Miller. I'm one of the leaders of the DuPage Clean Energy Coalition, as Connie mentioned. I'm also from First United Methodist of Downers Grove. I'm active in the green team there, and we have some folks here from our church. And I'm thrilled to see so many different folks from different places of worship across DuPage. It's really exciting. So, like Connie said, so our first speaker today is actually somebody that I met from another church in Downers Grove when we hosted a live stream locally for 350.org about different clean energy solutions. And it was at the First Congregational United Church of Christ in Downers Grove, which is basically across the street from First United Methodist. And Pastor Scott Oberly gave some introductory remarks at the live stream for his church hosting this event, and he just spoke really passionately about the importance of climate action. And so he's going to talk to us today about, why reducing our carbon footprint locally and taking action to implement clean energy is so important, kind of as a quick overview to start with. And so he's senior pastor at First Congregational United Church of Christ in Downers Grove. He has an MDiv in Biblical Studies from Duke Divinity School. He's worked on resolutions for the Illinois Conference on Environmental Justice, Sustainable Creation, and a DVD series for churches seeking to become green. He's also held weekend workshops on sustainable living in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and he's spoken at interfaith conferences on peacemaking as it relates to the environment. So we're glad to have Pastor Scott here today, and if you want to come on up, he's going to talk about how not only is it a way for our places of worship to save money, but it can also help you meet your service mission as well. So, thanks.
It's always a joy to drive in the parking lot and see a lot of Priuses and hybrid cars out there. I want to start with my bread and butter in the book of Esther. Mordecai, Esther's uncle, tells this young lady who's become queen, as they're facing a genocide of their people, he says to her, "Do not remain silent or think that remaining silent, by doing so, you, by living in this comfortable place, by being the queen, that you will be exempt from the effects of what is about to become to our people. But instead of being silent, go to the king and talk to him about what's about to happen." And Mordecai challenges her by saying, "Who knows? Perhaps you have been born or brought to this place, this position, for a time such as this." My brothers and sisters, about 15 years ago, beginning talking about the environment and peace across interfaith lines and intercommunity lines, we talked a lot about hope and local action. I remember growing up, turning off the lights, recycling, and doing these things, making a difference. And while all of that is important work, if you've followed the work of a young prophetic voice in the young girl from Sweden, 16-year-old Greta, says most recently, I'm not looking for your hope, I want you to panic. I want you to act as if your house is on fire because the house is burning. I want you to think about why you're here today as we begin our time. I know that most of you probably wake up as I do some days, hearing news of executive orders to push forward to Keystone and seeing political leaders politicize our care of the planet. It is easy to be discouraged. It is easy to be overwhelmed. Why are we here? I have one slide only. This is why I'm here. These are my 3 daughters, Jillian, Samantha, and Elise. And I will not look them in the eye 20 years from now when they are yet younger than I, what I believe is the window for us to act and act radically and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I didn't do more. I'm sorry that I believed that I was born at a time such as this, but I was in a position I was asleep. And I was just too overwhelmed, too discouraged, too depressed. I refuse to accept that answer. To act locally is vital. Keep recycling, keep turning off your lights, but organize. I don't know about you, but I refuse to let discouragement with our national leaders affect what we can do locally. Where do we live? Your own backyard. Where do you spend most of your time here? Where are most of your friendships, your connections? Here. This is where it begins. This is where we have the opportunity to have conversations with people who love us, friends, whether they see eye to eye or not, to say, we have this small window. We have this small opportunity to stay within 1.5 to 2 degrees of climate increase in temperature, to have a sustainable future, for them to have a chance, for them to have a life that is equitable and fair. As a kid, my parents read me The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. I love the book. I am the one who speaks for the trees, the Lorax says. And the Onceler, the young man who begins to make truffula needs, because everybody needs a need, and begins chopping down all these truffula trees, and they begin affecting the Barraloop bears and the fish, and I forget their names, and the special swans that make their noises. But that book really focuses on something that is the uncomfortable elephant in the room. And for my Republican friends, maybe that's an apt analogy. I hope my Republican friends begin to, I'm going to take this moment, I'm sorry, it might be uncomfortable, but we need more Republican voices who are concerned about climate change. But if we don't start to talk about our economic involvement in this at a local level, at a state level, at a national level, if we don't begin to think about how our actual way of life, which is driven by greed in many ways, a disposable society where products and people are beginning to be seen as disposable, then we will not achieve or get to a place of peace and sustainability with the environment. So why here? I believe it's up to each of us to do everything in our power, everything in our ability, everything that we can do. Don't worry about the things you can't do. You were put here for the reasons and the gifts and talents you have today, the things you have to contribute. To say, what can I do? Who can I reach? What can I do in my home, whether that's to go solar? What can I do to push my Buildings and Grounds Committee? Is anybody here yet from my... Fantastic. To go to a zero emissions church model, Not tomorrow, but 5 years, 10 years from now. How do we get there? We have capital book campaigns for everything else, from driveways to rooftops to tuck pointing. How about we get serious about not only making our building have a green footprint, but also being examples so that others in our community, other places of worship, other buildings and small business will look and say, hey, houses of worship are supposed to be a city on a hill. I read that somewhere. A light to their communities. Climate change does not discriminate based on color or orientation, or whether you live in the Hamptons or you live in the ghettos. We are all in this together. And though some want to deny it, I truly believe that this is one issue that can bring humanity together in a way that nothing else has, because this is our home. God has given us one beautiful, amazing home. And it is beautiful. But our resources are finite, though our imaginations and desires are not. So I hope and pray that each of you, as you hear speakers more gifted than I, will consider ways not to build walls, but to build bridges within your communities, to encourage others, particularly those who are in despair, because it is easy to get so discouraged that you get apathetic or cynical and say, it's too late, there's nothing more that we can do, the ship's already sinking. And again, I'll leave you with this thought. If we throw in the towel now, I want you to picture in your mind who it is that's your why. Your children, your grandchildren, every other species on this planet that deserves life. And when you start to get discouraged, I want you to refuse to accept it. Find that holy, righteous anger. Get up off your feet, off your couch, whatever you've got to do. Vote in your local elections. Go to your city councils. Go every week, every month if you have to. Take every other church that you can. Take every other citizen that you can. And continue like a steady stream to wear down those stones. And keep pushing. Keep moving forward. There is way too much at stake. I will not look my daughters in the eye and tell them I did nothing. My youngest girl is starting to, we went to the zoo, a local zoo, and we were visiting some family out of town, and they were talking about elephants and poaching. She was stunned to hear the ivory trade and the loss of habitat. So she decided that she'd come home, and she made a sign she's going to put up in church this week or next, asking people to contribute to ways to save elephants. And she's got a whole thing she's written for her class that she's presented. She's just 7. This other girl, 16. I'm talking to the adults in the room. We can't let kids fight this battle alone. But they're leading the charge. So I pray, and I ask that you help me to make prayers actions. That unless the ones there is told by the Lord, unless there is someone, unless Mordecai says, unless you stop remaining silent, nothing will change. And that, my brothers and sisters, is simply not an option. So are you ready to roll? Are you ready to move? Are you tighter to the status quo? Well, then you're in the right place. Amen.
Thank you. That was so perfect. Thank you so much. I am going to go back one slide because I was supposed to give you an overview of what our day would look like this morning, but I am so glad we went right to those inspirational initial comments. And I do think we're lucky. We have a bit of the choir here today, and we are energized, and that's why you're here. So I'm so happy, and thank you so much, Pastor, for those initial remarks. Here today, this is our agenda, so you know what's happening. Our next speaker will be, and I'll introduce her in just a moment, Cynthia Thomas from ComEd about energy efficiencies. Our keynote speaker, Dan Hunstra from Faith in Place. We're going to have 3 case studies of churches in the area who have done some remarkable things, and then we'll hold some questions at the end for you. Before we move into Cynthia, I want to just let you know a little bit of background on why this is so immediate and so important. In 2016, December of 2016, Illinois passed landmark legislation, nationally landmark legislation. We passed a law called the Future Energy Jobs Act. It made a revenue stream for money we'd been giving to ComEd for energy efficiency programs and for clean energy to now be shared with the public and to be help promote clean energy programs. So that legislation was part of why we are getting so much action on clean energy and solar now. It also spoke remarkably to equity and justice. Landmark legislation doesn't usually address that. It said the places we need to put up clean energy are the places that have been negatively impacted tremendously by these dirty coal plants. So those areas are slated to be some of the first receivers of community aggregation, or community solar projects. We're really happy about that. So there was a lot to do with the Future Energy Jobs Act, and it's just getting started and getting rolled out. Now it's 2019. The Sierra Club and other organizations have band together with the Clean Energy Coalition and are introducing more legislation to Springfield as we speak. There's a law out there which is called the Clean Energy Jobs Act, CEJA. CEJA is the son of FEJA. This new legislation times 4 all of what was done in the initial legislation. It is mushrooming. There's information, I wasn't able to print all their stuff out, but I do have some information at the DCEC table. If you are so inclined and want to write a postcard to your legislator, I brought postcards and the numbers of the bill. You can just stop right now, write your postcard, give it to us. Please support this legislation. I'm your constituent. I want it. And we will take care of the postage and hand delivering it one way or another for you. We'll make sure it gets there. I also want you to know something remarkable regarding elephants and donkeys. So, this is so cool. The only Republican that has signed on to co-sponsor this new legislation so is Representative Grant Worley. He's from Wheaton. He's from Naperville. He's my rep. I'm so excited. I told him he was an icebreaker. He, I hope, will help to bring other Republicans forward. This is a nonpartisan issue. It is being green, not red or blue. On April 13th, the Illinois Environmental Council is working with Grant Worley to host a town hall meeting to talk about clean energy in Naperville. It's the same time as this meeting, 10 to 12. We'll be at North Central College, the shining star of solar energy in DuPage. They have panels galore. But to Mr. Worley's great honor, I'm so excited about him, he suggested, let's encourage the senator from my district to be there as well. Let's do it together. Well, Senator Ellman is a newly elected Democrat. So we are reaching across the aisle. We're reaching out into the community, and this would be another great event for you to support. So there are some flyers on that event at the DCEC table as well. So we were a little ahead of schedule. We're now exactly on schedule, and I'm glad you had time to listen to that little advertisement. I'm going to be introducing Cynthia now. So Cynthia comes to us from ComEd. Let me flip my pages here. I want to get all her. Okay. Cynthia is the External Affairs Manager for Commonwealth Edison. She's been with ComEd for 20 years and has held multiple positions throughout customer operations. In her current role, she serves as the point person. She's a point person to know, a point person for 18 different contacts and 18 different municipalities within DuPage County. She's going to present today on energy efficiency and how it relates to the Future Energy Jobs Act. So join me in welcoming Cynthia. Thank you for being here. Do you need this? I'm going to get my junk out of your way.
Thank you. I'm going to get this one over here if I may. Good morning. Good morning. So a couple things. I don't like podiums, and I brought one slide too. How's that? We are one slide people. Okay, so I think I just hit this right here, right? There we go. Okay, so first of all, excellent comments. You guys like stole like half my thunder. So I'm so glad to be here. I met Connie, a few months back at another solar event. And we're chatting and we're talking and we decide to exchange information because we realize that we both are trying to get in front of the same group of people, faith-based community in DuPage County. That's where I work. I have 18 mayors and managers that I serve. And so I've been looking for how do I get into the faith-based community because I just didn't have the contact. So what I decided to do today, when Connie asked me for slides, I started, putting them together and all that. And I said, you know what? We're going to go right here. That's me. That's my email address. And that's my phone number. So if you, start wondering why I'm talking, take a picture, write it down. Trust me, we're going to be doing some business together. I also put up there the information for assessments. Because again, these two things I think are going to be the most important things to get us going in whatever direction we want to go with in terms of energy efficiency. This little piece of paper here is a fact sheet. When FEJA was passed in 2016, it was a huge, huge effort and a huge bill, and one that we were so excited about to be able to, and we've always had energy efficiency programs, but FEJA allowed us to improve upon that tenfold. So then my job became figure out what's on this piece of paper and go find people to tell the story. So my whole life is this piece of paper right here. So rather than 10 slides, I'm going to take I scribbled on it. I've got notes on here when I meet with people. This is what I'm going to talk to today to tell you what FEJA means and how it's important to you. And hopefully, when you leave here today, how we can make sure that not only yourself, but those that you serve have access to these programs. When I say free during this little presentation, I mean free to ComEd customers, but it's paid for by the program. You guys have heard that commercial, that tax commercial? Free, 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 free. I love that commercial. I was doing a presentation for one of my cities, and I said, such and such and such, and it's free, and the mayor said, stop. I said, yes, sir. He said, like free as in no money, like no one's going to ask for anything, free. And then he tried one of our assessments, and he understood. I was absolutely serious. So when I say that, again, it's paid for by the program, but it's free to ComEd customers. So the pastor touched on something I wanted to just mention because, my goodness, going green and making sure our earth is right for our kids is so important. And my girls, I have 3 kids. My girls they're on it. They don't use the little plastic bags in the grocery store to get their veggies. They take the reusable bags. They're vegans, they're vegetarians, and when I go to do something that they think is wasteful, I absolutely hear about it. And I'm the mother. So the girls are doing good. My son, Not so much. We're still working on him. He's 25, but trust me, wherever he is, he probably has a light on that he does not need. When that boy was at home, you know, you just come home and the house is just lit up. It's like, dude, I'm going to give you this bill in a minute if you don't turn this light out. So we're still working on him, but it's something that even I would get the plastic bags at the store when I was, you know, bagging up. I stopped. I'm now doing brown bags, and I'm putting those in the car so I can reuse them when I go to the store. Aren't you guys, do I get like a little hand around? There you go. I'm working on it. Okay, so FEJA, Future Energy Jobs Act, what does all that mean? So like I mentioned, ComEd has always had energy efficiency programs. What FEJA did was increase the dollar amount associated with that. So we went from $250 million to $400 million for energy efficiency programs. The cool part about FEJA, I guess is with all of the legislation that we've put through over the last 10 years, we're successful with FEJA if we spend the money. If we don't meet those goals, we're not successful. So everybody I can talk to, every church I can go in, anywhere we can get in front of people and tell them how to take advantage is important to us. For that reason, among many. So it's $400 million per year through 2030. The difference between now and 2 years ago, 10% of that money has to be spent in public sector buildings. That's churches, that's businesses, that's municipalities, their buildings. That's new. It's always been available on some level to commercial, but that's new, and that's another goal. So we want to make sure that all of our churches and all of the buildings, because there's a lot of older buildings that, you know, some of these folks are planning projects anyway. So what we want to do is make sure you don't miss $1 of incentives or rebates on a project that you're going to do anyway. So that's huge. And where those energy efficiency dollars, where the savings start, is that free energy assessment. If you call that number, or you go online there and make an appointment, it's free. It may take a couple weeks to get us in there. An engineer is assigned to your request. We come out. We go through your building, we look at your lights, we look at your equipment, we look at all the things you have going on there, and then the engineer will make recommendations and or provide assistance with filling out forms for rebates or the different things that you'll need off of that assessment. And that's for your building. Here's what's cool. You get to do the same thing. So unless has anybody done an assessment yet? Great. So I have a whole lot of folks who can speak to it. Do this for yourself. Call that number, make an appointment, an assessor will come to your house. Now, I've been with ComEd a long time, and before here, I was with CARE. I'll talk about that in a minute. When I was with CARE, we'd have our booths like we have today, and you know, we'd be talking to folks about different things and sign up. Well, I hadn't signed up. Well, I said, well, this is not right. I need to call and just see how this feels to customers who do it. So I called. I'm a ComEd customer. At the time, I had a rental that I was in between renters. So the bills at that house was in my name, and of course the bills at my house was in my name. So the bill does have to be in your name. I called and I set up an appointment for both buildings. At the rental place, the lady comes in. There was a gentleman there. He comes in, he changed out every single light bulb that I had not to LEDs. Free. Then he went to each of my sinks and changed the little aerators out. Free. He went to both my bathrooms, 3 of them, and changed out the shower heads to more water efficient ones. Free. Then he went through like the attic and all. He did all of that. Now, there were a few things that was going to cost me some money. So after he was done with all the free things, he comes back into the house with a report of all of those 2 or 3 things that he would recommend that I do to save more energy and the corresponding rebate. What am I going to say? Free. was like, this is cool. So then they come to the house where I live. A young lady comes there. She comes in, she does the same thing. I'm like, this is incredible. Wonderful. Did all the same thing. I got a phone call while she was there. And she went in my garage while I was on the phone. Now, you know, we do have a program where if you have an older fridge or freezer, we'll take it off the system, give you $50 for it, get rid of it for you. The whole point is to take it off the grid, which is why it can't just be not working. Well, I have a little freezer down there. It's probably been down there since, I don't know, 2003. It's terrible. I know that. But I got that freezer some years ago when my mom passed. I inherited the freezer. We're big foodies. That's a whole nother meeting. But anyway, I inherit this freezer. She goes downstairs, so I get off the phone, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna find that freezer. She's gonna find that freezer. So she goes downstairs, and she's like, you know, ma'am, you know, we could give you this, we could do this, because I didn't tell him I was with ComEd. I knew what she was going to do, but I let her go this way. I'm like, ma'am, you know, you know what? I said, this is what we're gonna do. I said, I'm gonna have to call you another day for this one. I still have some emotional attachment to this freezer, but I get it. But this piece, I'm not gonna be able to let go, but I thought it was so funny because she's like, oh my God, and she did. It was a win, for sure. It just happened to be a piece that belonged to my mom's. I'm not ready yet, but it was my experience with that program that allowed me to come out and be so passionate about, please call the number, because guess what? It's free. It's free. And that's where the programs start. Now, let's say it's your church, you know, it's your office building, you're calling for an assessment, you're going to, I don't know, upgrade your air conditioning system, you're looking at solar, whatever your project might be, the biggest key is getting us involved early. You can't finish a program or finish a project and then call us. We need to be right in lockstep with you. And then at the end of your project, any incentives that are available to you, we deliver what we call a big check. We love big checks with the amount of money that you've earned. I think my last big one was Elmhurst Hospital, and we presented a check. I was like $200,000. You know how fun that is? Like people show up, and there's cameras there and everything. So that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that no one's missing any money. So that's the energy efficiency part. Renewable energy. The law provides for $180 million per year, growing to $220 million per year in funding for renewable resources. That's what Connie was mentioning. It's a lot of money. Deal is, we need to make sure, and we made this part of the law, that everybody has to have access to it, whether it's community solar. So maybe I can't afford to put that equipment on my house, but I can plug into a community solar program that's available to me. The solar developers, you know, come into the area. They go through a lottery process and all of that. They're, you know, interconnected with the grid, all that good stuff. But they have to ensure that we have solar for all, and that there's education for our, you know, more depressed communities. People need to know what's available to them. And if you think, oh my goodness, I can't afford thousands of dollars worth of equipment on my house, you won't even look. But if there's a path to it, if there's rebates for it, and when you're dealing with your own home, there's even tax credits available for you to reduce the cost, that's what the solar portion of FEJA brought to us. So today, I know we have some information on our table. I will send out some links for all that signed up outside there with your name and email address. Please make sure you do that, because I will make sure that you have the links to the information from ComEd. Because there is a solar calculator where I can go, put in my address, and I can see what that means for me. Like if I go solar, what's that means, and what does it mean in terms of equipment and dollars and cents? And there's also a lot of information out there to just show you the path for solar. So I'll make sure that I get those links out to you so you can take a look. If you have general questions, you can call 1-800-EDISON-1. If you have real complex questions, they'll get you to the next group of experts behind them. But you want to start at 1-800-EDISON-1, and the links that I'll send out can take you right to the web, okay? Uh-oh. Okay, next, financial assistance programming. That is our care programs. Has anybody heard of ComEd's care programs, like on the radio or anything like that? Yeah. Well, of course, you guys. She better had. That's Erin. Say hi to Erin. She's my support today. So CARE has been around for a while. The first 5 years, it was $10 million a year. We had to build programs for our low income, for our seniors, and for our military folks. Those were the folks, and nonprofit organizations. Those were the folks that we focused on. Those dollars are not ratepayer dollars. They're shareholder dollars, and they reduce our revenue. So the first 5 years, I actually ran those programs. That's why I got to know so much about faith-based in Chicago, in Rockford. That's where I got a lot of my business from. Not so much out this way. So when I took this job, I'm looking, no one's talking to me about CARE. I get no phone calls about any problem. I mean, I get nothing. I might get one credit call a year from a mayor who says, hey, I got someone with an issue. Can you help? And what I would do if I get those calls is, see if they had any CARE dollars and where I could send them to get the information, to get funds. Our programs are managed through LIHEAP, CEDA, whatever you want to call it. They have a couple different names. The LIHEAP agencies manage our programs. So for residential special hardship, I think it's up to $500 now. It fluctuates through the year depending on funding. Could be $500 per household, could be up to $1,500 depending on how much money we have. They go to LIHEAP and they apply for ComEd's CARE programs. The cool part about our programs, we work with low-income agencies to build them, and the poverty line is 150%. So at 150%, you can get LIHEAP, you can get a lot of services. We go up to 200%. So we can catch people who may not be, at 150%, but they still need help. So we're able to do a little bit more than LIHEAP can. They can get LIHEAP and us, if you would. For our military program, they could go right to ComEd.com or 1-800-EDISON-1. For a military person who might need some assistance, they can get, I believe, up to $1,000 towards their bill. They just have some paperwork that they have to submit. But we want to support those that support us, obviously. So for FEJA, I spent the first $50 million. FEJA gave us another $50 million. And we now have legislation up right now that will allow us to take CARE out another 10 years past 2022. So FEJA really helps us make sure that we're taking care of those who may need our support outside of our regular customer base. So that also came with FEJA. And lastly is job training. Now job training, I get questions about, well, where are the jobs at? Well, we're creating the jobs because of all the solar work that's happening. What we are trying to do is work with agencies where there might be, let's say, folks who are coming out of prison and need jobs and can get qualified for them. We're looking to supply the work to those who most need it in every case that we can. So that's also another piece of the legislation. So with all of that, that's FEJA. And why this piece of paper is completely worn out with notes, because everywhere I could tell the story, I absolutely do. So I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Now, for the folks here, how am I doing on time? Am I okay? Okay, very good. I like to chat, so I have to check on time. What I'd like to do here, which is why I put my name and number up there, I would love to be able to sit with you. If you have a church, you have a business, you need support of some kind, the table that Erin is running out there, we do that kind of outreach all the time. Whether I'm in schools talking, we have things for parents, whether we're at a fair, wherever it is you need us to be, whatever event you got going on, we supply those tables for free so people can come and get information. Okay? Yes. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Can I come to church first? Okay, great. I come to church too. So we have those tables for any event that you would like us to be at. Now, I'm DuPage County, but I have people everywhere. So if you're really from Chicago or someplace else and you're not in my territory, someone like me would help you set that up, okay? Just call me. The other piece of that is talks like this. If you would like for me or someone like me to come and have a conversation like this with a group of folks that you call together, where they're clergy, where you all meet for your monthly whatever, meeting or what have you, I'd love to come and share this information. It's about passing it along. So it just kind of keeps going and going and going. So I can also come and do something like this, whatever scale. So I want to make sure I say that. So the last thing I'm going to say is the first, I would say, let's go with the first 2 people that call me and set up an appointment for me to come, sit down with you, and go over how we can support with tables, where we can go to speak. We come up with a few things that we could do for you. The first 2 that make the appointment and I could sit down with you, I got something for you. I'm not going to tell you what it is. But I want to be, a blessing to the folks that you support, so particularly churches or what have you. I would have a little gift that I would like to share, again, with the folks who may need some support in the establishments that you are ahead of. So my phone should be blowing up. But anyway, that is my spiel. Thank you so much, unless you have questions. We're doing questions later. Questions later. Oh, wait, the pastor has something. Wait, the pastor has something. Oh, it's being received very well. In terms of technical numbers, I can get you that too. But what we look to do is how many people are participating in the assessments, how many folks are taking advantage of the discount programs. I do have that information, not with me today, but I do have that information I can share with you. Please take my card. But this is how we get the word out. And making sure, and I'm telling you guys, call the number. And you're like, I don't know if I want. If you're not going to call the number, or you've already done it, have somebody call the number. Just try it. When they say free, you'll be like, the lady was right. The comment lady was right. So thank you very much for your time. I'll be sticking around for questions. Thank you.
Try it. You'll like it. Remember that old commercial? So thank you so much. It was perfect, a perfect introduction, because the first step to saving money and using less fossil fuels is energy efficiency. The next step, we're going to be led by Daniel Hunstra. Daniel is the Outreach Director at Faith in Place. He began as a volunteer back in 2014, gathering grassroots support for the EPA carbon rules. And then he later worked on helping to get the Future Energy Jobs Act passed in 2016, so thank you, Daniel. In 2015, he then joined the staff at Faith in Place, and he's been helping with smart energy programs in the western and northwestern Chicago suburbs. He has a BA from Communications from DePaul University, and we are so lucky that he was one of our organizers. We worked together, he, Vera, Susan, and I, in putting this program together for today. So thank you so much, Dan, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. I appreciate that nice, warm introduction. How many people are familiar with Faith in Place here? Oh, good. So those of you that don't know about us, we're a faith-based environmental nonprofit based here in Illinois. We work with houses of worship across all faiths on environmental issues. So when we say all faiths, like we work with Muslim mosques, we work with Jewish congregations, we work with Christian churches, we work with UUs too. How many people are UUs here? Yeah, we work with a lot of UUs. Obviously, this is DuPage UU. And then some temples and things like that, other groups as well. And everybody is really getting into the movement, and that's what's really exciting to see, is it's not just, oh, we work with, did I say Christian groups? As I look out at Pastor Scott. Catholics and Protestants alike. They're a major group as well that we serve. But everybody's getting involved because everybody wants to fight for our common home and make it a better place. And we say that we don't just try to avoid the problem or bring things back to neutral, but we focus on justice and trying to lift things up to make them even better than they were before. And we say we provide resources to help educate, connect, and advocate for healthier communities. And I'll be talking about some of those resources here. Pastor Scott already talked about a lot of the problems that we face, so I was just gonna throw up the slide and say, yeah, we have a lot of problems. When it comes to climate change and carbon pollution, it affects a lot of different things. But I like to keep things light and a little humorous, so I incorporate Far Side cartoons into my presentation sometimes, like this one. So there's two cows sitting on a couch, and then the phone is ringing, and then it says, well, there it goes again, and we just sit here without opposable thumbs. But of course, as people, we're blessed with opposable thumbs, and we say that we have the solutions at hand. So we're really blessed with not only saying we're going to dream and create solutions, but the solutions are here right now. And that's what's exciting. And so with renewable energy, we know that there's a lot of benefits. One thing that some groups aren't really focused or on climate change. Has anybody come across groups, especially houses of worship, that are like, oh, we don't want to talk about climate change? Or it's like it becomes a political issue for people. So we also I talk a lot about air pollution being a problem, and you can't really argue that there isn't air pollution from our fossil fuels. So sometimes some groups will focus in on that. We also try to lower our greenhouse gases. It's good for energy independence, and then saving money. How many people here like to save money? Like we had the free. And then as a house of worship, if you could save on your utility bills and not spend or waste your money there, what other programs would you roll that into? Could really focus in on your core mission rather than paying utility bills. How many people would like more money for their house of worship programs? Yeah, that's good, me too. And then so often, and I'm here to talk about solar, a little bit about energy efficiency. Whenever we get questions at Faith in Place about, what can we do, usually people come to us and say, hey, I want to work on solar. Can you help us do solar first? And sometimes that's their first project that they want to work on. And then we say, well, we really appreciate your enthusiasm. That's great, but what we do is we work with green teams long term to help them reach their goals. We have a get in where you fit in mentality where we have many, many programs. I forgot to mention that we have sustainable food and land use, water preservation. I spend most of my time in our energy and climate change area, and then we also do advocacy. But so we, as a green team coach, we help you reach your goals. We do a lot of listening and say, what are your goals, not just with solar, but what other things would you like to work on or that you have worked on? And we do a lot of listening, and then we work with you long term. How many people like an inspirational speaker like us here today, where we come in and we really wow your socks off and you're ready to do something? But then it's would you like somebody to be there more often to help you along that path? Because sometimes it's they bring the inspiration, but then it's well, what do we do now? So as the coaches, we really help you long-term reach that goal. And then we say that we go on a journey with you. This isn't meant to be a verbatim, these are the things you should do, but we put you on a path because sometimes people want to do that solar project first. And we say there's a lot of smaller steps along the way that you might want to focus on first, because if you focus on the biggest, hardest project first, you might become a little disappointed if you don't get that achieved right away. But so we work with you to do a lot of different things like smart energy workshops and audits and things like that, and then help get you to that path though, because we do think solar is really exciting, and that's one of the coolest things I think that we help houses of worship get up to. And then so we have 3 different types of energy audits that we offer for free. And then we actually partner with ComEd in some of, I don't know if you guys work with Clear Results as one of your groups, and then there's like a,
There's several that are many.
that you guys partner with. Yeah, so it's really cool. Like in some of the presentations I do, I think we should work together where I can then be quiet in the middle, sit down, and then say, here, let Cynthia tell you all about this special program. What we do is a lot of times, houses of worship, do you have a lot of free money laying around? Everybody raise your hand, just ready to write that check. So we do free level energy audits, and we bring partners with us. So how many people like having a meeting about something and then having to have another meeting about a similar thing, like another month or 2 later? How many people would like to like condense things so you can do many things at the same time? Yeah. I always say that we're sometimes at Faith in Place, we're forming a committee to look at how our committees are run in order to be more efficient in our committees. Or have you ever heard the joke, the expanding bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy? So sometimes we want to condense that, so we actually bring partners with on our audit that know about, they're basically contractors that know about all the savings that ComEd has, and then also one that focuses on your hot water and your gas and all the things that you can save there. So you actually get 3 reports, one from us that identifies a lot of low-hanging fruit and some strategies that maybe houses of worship appreciate because you might not have all that cash for that big project, but you might be able to do some of this stuff slowly internally if you kind of have that plan and then kind of the knowledge of how do you actually set goals and achieve them along the way without money. So it's really a cool process, and I learn something new every time when I go on them. I basically go, I say I look pretty, but I don't look pretty. I basically just sit there and say, yeah, that's a great idea. Yes, that's good. Because we have Jim Cavallo. He's actually a member here, right? He's not here today, though, but he's been many years in the industry doing audits, and he actually does workshops, and then also he teaches at different colleges people how to do energy audits and energy efficiency. So he's really knowledgeable, and he's really great to come with us. And then what we do is we do a lot of different stuff, like we compare apples to apples about, because we all have different things. Like if you have a really old building, your needs and your usage is going to be very different than a building that was just built in the 80s or 90s. So we compare apples to apples. We outline projects and ways to accomplish them that are in line with other houses of worship that are similar to yours. We do the strategies, and then we also assist in defining scopes of work. How many people love it when you get a contractor to come in and they say, you can do all these projects, and they list out a whole bunch and they are really expensive? How many people are really like that? But what we do is we say, hey, maybe the scope of the work is good to focus on a few other smaller things first. Maybe that, for what you're going to save the most money on is a different project. And then we also answer questions about the contract. We actually had some contracts that were put forth, and then we basically review them and say, okay, this fits within your scope that you should be focusing on. This is a great bid. And then some of them are not, so we say, hey, maybe, we should go back to them and ask them to focus on something a little different. And then I always say that houses of worship can be really great and inspirational when we're actually focusing on our building to do energy efficiency and solar projects. And then that can make us as individuals want to do more. And then so it makes me think about this Far Side cartoon again, where there's this ant with these really big shoes. I'm sure they fit appropriately. And he's basically walking on and smooshing other ants. And then the mom is saying, Ernie, and it could be my mom from before, saying, Dan, look at what you're doing. Take off those shoes this instant. Because how many people know exactly how big your carbon footprint is? So what we say is it's really good to understand that. And then when we inspire our congregation members to want to do more, we want to give them tools so they can actually do something about it. So we do presentations and give them resources like calculators, and then we focus in on the free things that ComEd gives people, to get people going in the right direction. And then instead of having to spend money, you can get free things. We established before that free is our favorite price point. So she already covered many of that stuff, so I'm not going to beat that horse again. But what's nice is we give that opportunity for your members to do things as well. And then moving into renewable energy. How many house worship have south-facing roofs or flat roofs somewhere? You're probably a great candidate for solar. Does that make you happy? Maybe. So often when we think about, well, how are we going to fund these projects, many new funding models have come into play, and it's all about giving us more choice, because it's not a one-size-fits-all for every house of worship, for every building, for every type of community. So we actually launched a project a couple years ago called the Nonprofit Green Lending Program. We had help with the state treasurer, Michael Ferricks, and then Everence is a company that's a bank. And then what you can do is you can actually get a loan, because sometimes House of Worship will do a fundraiser to try to do solar, and then they might have a gap. Or they might want to do a really big project and then get some of the money, and then they can get some of the discounts to bring down the cost, but they still have a gap. So you can get a below interest rate loan for your house of worship. And the cool thing about this is often for smaller houses of worship, there'd be some predatory lending sometimes, and they would make the actual pastor put up collateral and have the pastor sign for the loan. Would you like to do that for your church? Yeah, you might not be there for the whole length of the term of the loan, so it's really good not to have to do that. And this is a great program, and it will pay for many different things. If you want to get a new roof on your building, how many people know that their roof is old and it has leaks and you need to do stuff about it? You can actually use this money to pay for a new roof if you focus on also getting insulation for it. It's good for lighting, motion sensors, your HVAC system, Wi-Fi controlled systems, air sealing, tankless water heaters, and also actually solar renewable energy. So it's really exciting. You can really use it for anything. And then a few other options. You can do a direct full purchase. Like let's give some ballpark numbers. If House of Worship is about a mid-sized congregation of about 300 members, they might get something like a 25 kilowatt system, which would be about 40% of their usage. We're all friends here, right? So we're just going to do ballpark numbers, and you're going to say, yeah, that's exactly right, Dan. But so you can either pay for it 100% all out and then have the all the benefits right away, or there's another grant program besides the loan program we talked about, where if you're doing a project that's 50 kilowatts or higher, there's actually a grant program for that. And some of it is through the Solar for All or FIJA. They focus in on grants for House of the Worship that especially focus in on low-income communities. And so that's a really good thing, because it's not supposed to be just for the affluent or people that could normally afford projects, but it's supposed to be for everybody. And that's one of the really cool things about FIJA. I also mentioned before the Green Lending Program. And then one of the really cool things that have come into place recently is a power purchase agreement. Has anybody ever heard of those before? Good. So if we say that same system, ballpark again, is about $80,000, usually sometimes that's a hurdle for many houses of worship to actually put that much money up front. But you could do some fundraising and maybe get $15,000 and pay that up front, and then you get your solar installed and you start having the benefits day one. And what you're doing is the power purchase part is you're actually purchasing the power from the group that installed it, but they give you a discount on the rates, and so you start saving money right away. And then after about 7 years, you can do a buyout of about $7,000, and then the system is yours. And the reason why this works for the contractors is how many churches or houses of worship pay taxes here? Now, you can lose your tax status if you talk about politics nonstop from the pulpit, right? So if you want to take advantage of the tax credits, you could go that route. and say, we really like those tax credits, so we're gonna, go all political, vote for this person. Not recommended, but that's an option, and we're all about options. But so they take the tax credits, they take depreciation over the value of 5 years for the system because they're a company, and then they also take the renewable energy credits for that as well. And then, so for only, if my math is right, is that $22,000? You can own an $80,000 system. And so it's really great because it really lowers the threshold for being able to get solar. And I know that my house of worship actually went for this system. It's Palatine, Countryside Church UU in Palatine. And we actually did a fundraiser where we really got it small chunks where we did, each panel was $250. We had 90 panels. Each one was $250. We even got the youth group involved, and they sponsored 4 panels. I don't know where they got the money from, but they got the money for 4 panels. I think they hit up their families and got donations, and I think they even did a bake sale at one point. But families purchased them, and we had a nice little plaque on the side, like in memory of, I know I bought a panel in memory of my grandparents who really got me into the environmental movement in the first place by connecting me to the natural world. So I say it's their fault that I'm here today, so I bought a panel for them. And then we had a short video, but I guess sometimes when you convert videos into PowerPoint, it saves them as a picture and not a video. Does anybody love PowerPoint and how it does that? I love it too. But it basically says, as people of faith, we should be the leading the environmental movement, because we bring not only the focus on let's help the environment, but let's help people at the same time, like with FEJA. One of the things that we helped get passed in FEJA is 2,000 jobs are being carved out for people that are returning citizens from prison or foster care alumni. Because really, people like to follow in healthy patterns, but sometimes they fall into unhealthy patterns. And then when they get out of jail, basically, and then try to re-enter the work system, the workforce, it's really difficult to find a job. But if you can find a job that you can rely on, that pays a living wage, that you can maybe be proud of, you might really have an opportunity to follow healthy patterns. And I know a lot of houses of worship have prison ministries and visitations and things like that and focus on prison rights. So it really dovetails really well into our current missions. So we love to focus in on helping people and the planet at the same time. And those solutions, we really need them right now. And then so to have people of faith involved in the movement is really critical. And then we say, if the last line in the video is, if people of faith won't do it, who will? And then I like to do one thing to energize us at the end, and I think it was mentioned a couple times by Pastor Scott, so I want everybody to stand up. Let's see if you're awake. And then I don't know if you can see, I tried to bump up the font, but this is a quote by Edward Everett Hale. It talks about doing what we can do. So repeat with me excitedly, right? I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Thanks, you can be seated. So I also give the analogy that sometimes we get really overwhelmed in the big picture and everything that we have to accomplish. How many people have ever gone camping before and then you have to clean up the site at the end of it? I used to go camping with Cub Scouts all the time, and we would really make a mess of the site. It was everybody else, it wasn't me ever. One time I did get in trouble, though, for throwing a on-fire marshmallow across and it hit a tent, but there was no destruction. It was fine. But we would always be tasked with cleaning up the campsite, and for some reason they would task me to do that a lot, and because I had nothing to do with trashing the campsite ever. And then so they'd be like, hey, you need to work on this, help clean up the campsite. And I'd be like, that's not fair. Even though I sure did my fair share, I didn't do all of it. And they said, no. They called me Daniel all the time. I go by Dan, but they'd be like, no, Daniel, you don't have to do everything. You just have to help get everybody else kind of energized and helping out and do their part. So if you've done camp cleanup with groups, you know how you do that. Basically, you get everybody lined up along the edge of the campground. You put like your fingers tips out, and then you basically walk and you just clean what's in front of you. So we always say when it comes to climate, we don't have to do everything, but we should do something. And we always say at Faith in Place, let's focus in on one thing and have that one thing be something that you're passionate about, and then we'll help partner with you and work with you long-term to help you reach those goals. And then as soon as we start one thing and then accomplish that, we can celebrate and then move forward and set our next goal. If you saw this flyer on the table, you might want to grab it. It talks about tips for your green team. If you have a green team or you want to start one, we can help you do that. And that's one of the first steps in getting going on the path to like solar and the big energy efficiency projects. And that's all that I have. This one? And that's original art in the background by Dan Hunshaw. It has along the outer edge the quote, and then the little sun rays have parts of the quote in there as well. It's part of a bigger picture, but I just put part of it on there. So yep, that's it.
All right. That was perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so we are, I promise, we're going to have lots of time for questions. We have 3 case studies. So 3 different people are here to tell you what they've done in their churches. Just as evidence, you know, we need evidence. This works, so examples. So our first one is going to be Susan, right here at DuPage Unitarian. And I'd like you to come on up and do the first one, please.
I want to welcome everybody here to our church today. We're so glad that you came. And I'm Susan Camasta, and I'll be followed by a couple of other people from different churches. And we're all going to just tell you some things that we've done just for fun. And we'll do some questions and answers after, as Connie said. First of all, I wanted to mention that in addition to solar panels that I'm going to tell you about that we put on our church, I don't know, about 8 or 10 months ago, we do a lot of other things here. And a good example is the sanctuary that you're sitting in right now. This was built, I want to say, like 5 or 6 years ago, something like that. And when we built it, we were thinking green, which is good because that's an important value of our church. And in fact, that's one of the big reasons that I belong to this church, is that it's a way for me to live out my values and walk my talk. And that's the reason I'm on the Green Sanctuary Committee at this church, our green team. We're actually accredited by the Unitarian Universalist Association as a green sanctuary, so we had to do certain things to get that accreditation. But just with respect to this sanctuary that I mentioned, just some things I wanted to point out, and you can read some of the other things on that slide. This dais was built from ash trees that we had to cut down on the property. There was a time, of course, if you remember, a few years ago, where cities were cutting all the ash trees down, and we had to cut some down to make room for this new sanctuary. So many of them are in this dais. Another cool thing, I think, are the rocks that are here and also in the kind of the hallway between here and Creeves Hall. Those were reclaimed from a small building at the Conservation Foundation in Naperville. When they did some building, they took this small clow house down, and the rocks are in the building. So we've done some other cool things like that, and as I said, that's one of our important values at this church, and so we've done all sorts of other things to try to live out that value. When we built this church, we talked about doing some sort of, well, when we built the new part of this church, we talked about doing some sort of cool renewable energy. Geothermal was thrown out, but it was thrown out because we had no money to do anything like that. And people were talking about solar, and we said, well, maybe at some time we'll do that, but right now we don't have the money. Well, so a few years start to pass, and we talked about solar a little bit more, and Jean McConnell, who's sitting in the back of the room here, was very insistent that we should do solar. And we told Jean, solar would be awesome, but we don't have any money, and the board is not going to let us do a fundraiser, and how are we going to pay for it, and yada, yada. But Jean does not listen to no. And she brought us articles and just kept talking about it. She talked to some people like Jim Cavallo, who Dan mentioned before, who belongs to this church and is an energy efficiency expert. We have George Peck, was another person who does the engineering at this church, who was very much involved with the numbers and the calculations. We had some other people involved, including myself. I was basically just a cheerleader and a communications person, and just really, let's do it. But anyway, like I said, Jean wasn't going to hear a no. So she had some people come in to talk to a small group of members at our church. And 2 of them gave us proposals for doing solar here. Rethink Electric was one and WCP was the other. We ended up going with WCP just based on the fact that they were going to give us a better deal. Because like I said before, we didn't have any money, even upfront money, to spend on this. And the board was like, no, you're not going to do a fundraiser. Because we did talk about, you know, let's get people to buy some panels, but that was kind of out of the question. Anyway, we ended up going with WCP with a lease. And let me go on here. Originally, we were hoping to put more panels than we ended up with. This is their proposed drawing. And the front part is the older part of the church, which has a nice flat roof that's south-facing. And then we also wanted to put some panels on the narthex, or this kind of connecting area here. But it turned out that the angle wasn't right, and plus we had some trees that were going to shade that part of the roof, and so that wasn't going to work. So we ended up scaling down the project a little bit, but there are panels now on that flat part of the church that's kind of in this direction. And we have approximately 80 panels. There they are. So we have a 25.6 kilowatt peak system, which is just what you were talking about before. It provides us about 50% of our electricity. And we have this 15-year lease, as I said. When that's over, we'll have the option to buy the system for something like $1 market value, which at the time, because of depreciation, will be something like that. And we can continue the lease, and they will maintain the panels, or we can actually buy the panels, and then we'll have to do some other kind of maintenance contract. You're probably interested in how much money we're paying. So our lease is actually $51 a month, and we're saving about $250 on our electric bill. So it's a savings overall for us of about $200, and that's per month, and that's a good thing because, as you mentioned, there's other things that we can spend the money on. And for me, the money is great, but I'm more concerned with the walk your talk. You know, one of our principles is to respect the interdependent web of life of which we are a part, and what that means is that you have to do things to, again, walk your talk and do what you say. And so that, to me, is really important, that we're reducing our carbon footprint. This is from March 28th. There's something called the Sunny Portal where we can go online and see live data of what's going on the panels, and that's really kind of fun to do when you're bored and have nothing else to do. So that's from just a couple days ago, and we saved some carbon dioxide that day, as every day, so that's great. And I noted on here it was an overcast day, so that was the power output at 2:30 on an overcast day. There's all sorts of data that you can get graphed on this Sunny Portal, and so this is also, I just took a screenshot a few days ago, energy and power for January, February, and March, and of course, as the days are getting longer, we can generate more power. So there's all sorts of interesting graphs that you can play with, and if you like numbers, things you can look at. And that's about it. So I'm going to introduce Mary Alice from Elgin, and she's going to continue.
I'm speaking first. And I'm Joe Masonica, Mary Alice's husband. So we are from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Elgin, and we're members of the Green Committee. Over the years, our church has made several efforts to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels by transitioning to cleaner sources of providing electricity and heating for our building to save us money, to reduce our output of CO2, and to combat climate change. Because, as Sharon just said, one of our core principles is to respect the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. So Mary Alice is first going to talk about our solar panels.
Hi, I'm Mary Alice Masonic, and this is the Unitarian Universalist Church of Elgin. It is a reconstructed dairy barn from a 100-year-old dairy barn on the property where the church once stood. It was just a farmhouse at that time, across from Sherman Hospital. They were widening Randall Road, and we moved and decided to take some, timber, logs. We took a lot of wood from the dairy barn, and this was built. And like Susan, I'm a member of my church because of the principle of concern for the earth, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, and also, the activism that churches like this get us involved in. This was our solar panels. We just have 40, which is half of yours, I think. They were installed in 2012. That's our former minister, Dan Brozier, walking. The joke is he's going around to check the electricity, what's it called? Meter, thank you. How does this work?
Just point the next arrow and should go forward.
One of our green team members, John Yoshatani, really was into our whole solar project, and so he did a lot of analysis. I have something he created which explains the costs and all the benefits from it. But this is just the first 21 months or so after they were installed. And you can see summer is different than winter, less light in the winter. And in addition to producing a lot of kilowatts and kilowatt hours, megawatt things, we also we reduced our carbon footprint. We instead of burning fossil fuels during this period, we saved. There was a carbon uptake of 37,839 pounds of carbon, which is equivalent to 461 trees. That's in a 21-month period. So if you want information about, specific information about our solar panels, this is, I have this for you.
Let's see what the next one is. Whoops. What's that? That's our door. I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, so another project that we considered was, in terms of clean energy, was transitioning to a geothermal ground source, heating source, because our building is heated by propane. We don't have access to a natural gas pipeline. Propane is very expensive, and I think it's a bad greenhouse gas. So anyway, so we had both an energy audit and a feasibility study to seriously look at putting in this geothermal system. Unfortunately, it turned out that it was going to be more than we could afford at the time. However, from the energy audit portion of our study, we determined there are areas that we could make some improvements in energy efficiency, especially by sealing cracks around our windows, doors, because remember, this is an old barn, right? So there are some leaks. So we have made some improvements in that way. Pardon?
Blower test.
Oh, yes, that's what that is. That's our blower test, right? It's part of our energy audit. That helps us to determine where the leaks are in the building and how much the building is leaking. And it turns out our building is kind of leaky. So, right, next.
About 15 years ago, we started programming our thermostat. We realized that the church was not occupied for over 100 hours a week, so why heat it? And through the help of the Interfaith Coalition on Energy, which studied how low can you go with heat in a church, we reduced our heat to 45 degrees when the church wasn't occupied. And that was supposedly safe for the piano and other things. However, our insurance company considers 55 degrees the minimum. So now our low is 55. But we program it for when the church is occupied. The sanctuary isn't used that much during the week, so it doesn't get heated that much. Like it's at 55. And the offices are used during the week, but we try to program the timing of that according to when the people come in. I'm sorry? The Interfaith Coalition on Energy. And again, it was 15 years ago. I haven't looked into it lately. I hope it still exists. I will look in.
So another project we undertook was to convert our fluorescent lights in many of our rooms to LEDs to save energy. So we're in the process of making that conversion. We're doing it with volunteers. So we've already converted about 100 of our lights to LEDs. This saves about 50% of the electricity. It takes about half the amount of electricity to light an LED bulb as it does a fluorescent. Another big advantage is that the LED bulbs are made out of plastic, and they have no mercury in them. So if you drop them, you just have some plastic cleanup. If you drop a fluorescent bulb, now you got a problem because you have some mercury also that has to be somehow cleaned up.
I'm sorry, did you give incentive for those lights, or no? Is the church paying for them directly?
No. One of our members did some research and found bulbs at a pretty good price. So.
Just keep in mind for lighting projects like that, where possible, you might want to call us for one of those assessments that I talked about, because there might be it used to be ran by DCEO. They would have programs to give you incentive for changing your lights out. Now ComEd runs those programs, and if it's possible and you qualify, you want to make sure that you get the dollars for that as well. So
Okay, thank you. So, in conclusion, all these steps that we just mentioned, and there's other things we've done too, right? But these steps are all important for us as congregations to take, right? However, as Pastor Scott mentioned earlier, in the larger picture, these actions alone will really do little to combat the effects of climate change. We need action on a national and a global scale to minimize these impacts. So one of the most important things our congregations can do is to educate and inspire our members and our congregations to take action, to encourage our leaders to take action on climate change.
I just wanted to say we too are an accredited green sanctuary. In fact, we're the first church in Illinois to become accredited as a green sanctuary. 2003. I have information, if anyone is interested, both I could email you or I have handouts about the solar project, but we have information about the do-it-yourself LED swap that our member, one of our Green Team members, came up with this thing herself and did a proposal for the church, And then we bought ThinkLux bulbs, I think it was ThinkLux. And anyway, we know how to do it. We do it ourselves. And also, information, what else? I have some information. So I have a clipboard. If you want me to email you some stuff, just put your name and email address on here and what you're interested in.
Where are you going to put that?
I don't know. Out there, maybe. In my hand. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mary Alice, I'm going to emphasize, we have one more case study, and I'll introduce her in just one second, but I want to, Mary Alice, if you want to email us or me, the information you have, because I hope you're not shy about signing the sign-in sheet. We want to follow up after this event. Cynthia has valuable information for you. We have some information for you, so we'll share any information that has been shared here. We can share the slides, because it'll have the contact information for all the folks that have been presenting to you today. So we really hope you sign the sign-in sheet, because that's what we're going to use, legibly, because that's what we're going to use to get back to you. Our last case study, and then we'll have some questions, is Ginny Judd. So we're not all UUs here. We've got Ginny Judd from St. Mark's Episcopal Church. Thanks, Ginny.
Okay, yeah. Good morning. It's great to see so many people here, and I see somebody from St. Mark's. Scott Shorney is here. Thank you for coming. My name is Ginny Judd. I'm a member of St. Mark's Episcopal in Glen Ellen. And my story with Faith in Place is in November of 2012, I heard about an energy workshop that Faith in Place was sponsoring for houses of worship to find out about energy programs. So I convinced our then building and grounds person to go with me, and we learned about energy audits. And so the following spring, we had an energy audit and found out that there were two major things that we could address: lighting and uninsulated steam pipes. So our building is, part of it was built in about 1950, part of it was built in 2003, and then an older part was an old house that was connected to the church that was probably built in the 20s. So a lot of different issues with the building itself and lighting from all different eras. So the two opportunities were, in the older part of the building, replacing incandescent bulbs with LEDs and replacing T12 fluorescents with T8s. The newer part of the building already had T8s, and at that time, that was in 2013, that was already like the latest, greatest that you could do affordably. So that's my big slide of lighting. And then this is the very exciting shot of the boiler room with the insulated steam pipes. So because of Faith in Place, we were able to get the audit. They connected us with resources to provide incentives from ComEd and from NICOR, and that and a small grant that had a deadline on it got us to actually take action and make a decision and get the work done in the fall of 2013. It was supposed to be about a 2 to 3 year payback, but as our church has grown and activities have grown, our church is right at the edge of downtown Glen Ellen, so we're very much a part of the community, and we encourage community groups to meet there. So we have 7 days a week, pretty much all day, every day, things going on in the church. So the lights are always on, the heating and air conditioning are running. So we didn't get the payback quite as quickly as we wanted, but we still are saving money, and we're glad we did that. But it's been a while since our last energy audit. So we have scheduled with Faith in Place an energy audit for the 3rd week of April, and we're looking forward to whatever new technologies there are that can help us. And then I hope our next big project is going to be looking at solar panels and how can we do that. And actually, it was so good to hear from you, Susan, that your board said you can't do a fundraiser, because that would have stopped me in my tracks. And it didn't stop you in your tracks. And so that's, yeah. So it's good to hear those stories and know that there are a lot of paths that can be taken, and if the one that you think is going to work gets blocked, you find another one. So that's my story. And by the way, I work for Faith in Place now, and I'm so glad I do, but when we started this, I was not an employee, I was just a fan. So, thank you.
Okay, so I want to give some opportunity for questions. We're going to do questions first, and I have a young woman here from Cub who will speak at the very end, and she has a few comments. I will also just tell you, it sounds like we have 2 great resources for energy efficiency audits. And my church contacted ComEd, and what Mary Elsa's volunteers are doing, they are doing for us for free. Like, they're buying these things, they're ripping out the old ones, buying these things. The only commitment we had to make was that we would recycle the metal old things. We had to find a way of recycling them. Yeah, so they're both, I mean, whatever works for the church. So Vera's going to help me out. Vera, if you would take this microphone, are there any questions, people who want to?
Just want to dovetail what you said on the resources.
Maybe take it to
There's also a group called Scarce, and they'll do an audit that goes through like cleaning products in your building, things in your kitchen. If you have a day school or preschool in your church. They'll go through books. If you have an old church library, you're looking to recycle books. So they also do some things that are unique to augment the energy efficiency side of resources as you're doing efficiencies in your church.
All right, and then, so I'll let Susan, and then 1, 2, okay? 1, 2, 3.
If I could just dovetail off of Scarce, if you go into our kind of the meeting hall that you came in through, you'll see we have an earth flag on the wall that we earned from Scarce, but they came here and did an audit and made all sorts of suggestions of things that we could be doing, and you can earn an earth flag too for your church.
Okay, the gentleman in the blue jacket, please.
Does anybody have experience with private industry providing money to pay for these items and sponsoring these items? I've heard something about that.
There is a company for solar panels. There's a company called, I know one, Jeff, you can help me, the one that Danny's in Sun Power or Power. There is a company that does do that. They've been, Sunrun. They will pay for the panels to put up there for you, but they own them and then you rent them. It's similar to what Susan described. Sunrun, and they work out of Rethink Electric.
So there are companies that will provide panels and donate them to a church and get a tax rebate.
Jeff, do you want to take that?
Yeah, the way it works is there's a number of developers and that work with installers, and they will come to a building like this. Usually it's the larger installations they're interested in, and so they would say they take advantage of all the tax incentives and like accelerated depreciation and things that a church can't do. And they put it together financially, and they get the federal tax credit, and they get the state incentives, and so they put it all together, and they give you an option for what you can be paying for electricity. And Rethink Electric might be an example of a company that might actually do the installation work, and the company in Naperville that this church used is the same model. So it's just a matter, and if you go to like the Illinois Solar Energy Association website, they have a list of contractors and companies that do all this kind of work, and they categorize it so you can hone in. But there's a lot of people you can talk to, and I can talk to you later about that.
So we'll include ISEA, Illinois Solar Energy Association, on the information that we send out to y'all. The lady in the red check was next, and I have you on the stack, sir. Okay, you'll be fourth.
I have a story to share. We were a 2 Prius household, and my 2007 Prius died a horrible death last spring. And so we thought long and hard about what we were going to do, and we decided we had the resources to get a Bolt EV. So we did, but we had no place to charge it. We had torn down our prehistoric garage, and there was nowhere to charge it. But the community church in Naperville on the corner of Ricketts and Ogden Avenue, you may know them as the Yellow Box Church, sitting out in the parking lot is a free car charger. And because of them, I was able to drive a Bolt EV and not drive a gas guzzler for 7 months before we were able to build a new garage and get our own solar panels on the roof and charge it that way. And without their commitment, I would not have been able to do that. So I don't know how much it costs them, but it is a fabulous community resource, and I'm always seeing cars there. So I challenge all of you, and I'm challenging my own congregation, to be part of that outreach. It's a great outreach. You get people coming in, you help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and you get some of the gas guzzlers off the road. So thank you.
What a great story.
Thanks for sharing that.
Okay, Laura, you'll be next. And then I just will also say, on the new law that we're trying to get past, CEJA, the fourth pillar of that law is transportation and EV funding. And it was not included in the original FEJA law. So CEJA is growing up and is addressing the biggest polluter we have now, which is air pollution due to transportation. So, okay, yes, sir.
That was a good segue into what I'll have to ask you, with dealing with FEJA as well as CEJA. My question deals with energy storage. Is there funding for energy storage through FEJA or CEJA?
Not yet, but man, I was talking to someone else earlier today. That is a huge thing that's a problem that has to be addressed. And we are lucky living in Northern Illinois. One of the biggest researchers in the nation on solving that problem is Argonne National Labs. So they're on it. I support them. We need, I've been saying this for 15 years. When President Kennedy said, we will go to the moon in 10 years, we will solve this problem, we will do it. We need that national leadership to say,
absolutely,
we will solve this problem, we can do it, we'll be there. So the local leadership's doing it, we're preaching where we can, and you're right, it is something that needs to be addressed further.
Thank you.
All right, Laura, and then Pat, and then the other gentleman. Laura?
I think Dan talked about a website I think I can blast out.
Oh, do it. We got the mic. Let's be official.
Okay, I will. Website for your carbon footprint? Did you mention that? You had a slide and I don't remember what the address was. No, Dan, I think. I have one for you too, actually.
Can you come up here, Dan, so they can hear you? And get ready.
I want to write.
Sure, it's through Berkeley. And then when I do an energy workshop, I actually include it and then talk about what you can actually do in the website. And what's cool is it's not like a one-size-fits-all. Like you can either go really detailed. It's the last bullet, coolclimate.berkeley.edu/calculator. It's really short URL. But yeah, it's cool. You can do real specifics, or you can do general and say, I have a household of 4, and this is my area, my zip code. And it's really cool because it does transportation, it does food. I didn't know how much my carbon footprint was based on food, travel, and then energy as well. So it's really a cool site.
Thank you.
And you can use it for your business or church or individuals.
And my other question is, you, Cynthia, said something about public buildings, 10% or 20% of the money that is being collected can be used for public? I missed that. And I
10%. So of the up to $400 million that we'll spend in energy efficiency programs, incentives, et cetera,
and this
have
is
to
under
be
FEJA?
spent. Yeah, this is FEJA.
Okay.
It has to be spent. Some of those 10% of those dollars have to be spent in public sector buildings. So
That's huge. That's
it's huge,
wonderful.
and it doesn't mean that's all that we'll spend, but a minimum of 10%. So getting our municipalities to participate in those assessments and programs, getting individuals to do it, all of that, churches, older business buildings, things like that. Some of our CNR customers can take advantage of that, but yeah, it's 10%.
Super. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I'll also just quickly say, because we also have a calculator at ComEd.com, I mentioned that. That's, if you want to see what solar looks like for you, it's a solar calculator. I could put my address in there, and it'll help me understand how much money I might save, what effort it would be for me to take advantage of solar. So I'll make sure that's part of the links that you get when you get the information from the meeting today.
May I say 1 minute worth on the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act? We've talked several times now about we're doing all that we can do, but we need a big plan. And this is an act that's been introduced in the House, should be introduced shortly in the Senate. You can investigate it by looking at the information online at Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, House Resolution 763 right now. And there's a way you can go online and support it. It's a big answer to a big problem. So, I'm done.
Your paperwork is on the DCEC table, so folks, if you are interested in that, grab a paper on it, because we want you to know about it. Pat, and then this gentleman, and then Ginny.
Hi, I'm Pat Clancy. I'm on the Green Sanctuary Committee here. And your story about your electric car kind of reminded me. At this church, we have what we call the Sunday Morning Forum. We also have 2 church services in this room. The Sunday Morning Forum is at the other end of the building at 9:30. And on April 14th, we're going to have Ted Lowe, who's a good friend. I think he did our very first energy audit that we had here and helped us with our Green Sanctuary Committee. And he's Mr. Sustainable Living. He's giving a talk at our Sunday Morning Forum on April 14th called One Person's Efforts at Sustainable Living in DuPage. And he's going to talk about his solar energy and his heating his house with wood and his electric vehicle and his gardening. He raises most all of his own food. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, and I know Jeff has a talk at the Morton Arboretum in April also, but it might be filled up by now, Jeff. Yeah. So April 11th. Thanks, I'm done.
The gentleman right behind you. Yeah, thanks, Pat.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Royce Cunningham. First of all, as an architect, as a green architect, I love this building and this site. I can't wait to come back in a couple of months when the spring colors come out. But I'm here, I've done, collaborating with Faith in Place at the Metropolitan Church in Chicago. We had in collaboration with our Faith in Place partner, we had the energy assessment done. And my question to Cynthia is that how do we go about having the energy audit performed? We had the energy assessment, but not the blower door test and the energy audit followed by the air seating process.
So we've been out, we've done the assessment. The engineer provided you with
ComEd and People's Gas, the whole team, yes.
Okay, and so now you're looking for
an energy audit.
Now that you've done the work, is it the work done yet?
Work isn't done.
Okay.
The assessment was done.
Okay.
But we need the energy audit itself done.
Okay.
With the blower door test, the air sealing, air leakage.
The engineer should have been able to help you with that.
That seemed to be another category for them.
Well, I tell you what, let me give you my card.
Okay.
Can you call me?
That's really right.
I love for people to call me. Did y'all figure that out? Anyway, call me because my folks over in energy efficiency let me get a look at what application we got for you, like what the guys are doing, and dig into that a little bit more for you. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, it's the Metropolitan Church on 41st and King Drive in Chicago.
And okay, that'll work. I'm gonna give you my card, and I can come to church, right?
You certainly can. Thank you.
There's something in it for you. I have one more question, Ginny, and then we'll see if we'll. I think we'll have one more thing, and then we're very close to thanking you all for being here.
I just wanted to remind you all of something that came up several times about CJA and FEJA, that one of the parts of the bill is to provide training dollars to people coming out of the prison system and people coming out of foster care system. And these people need jobs, and so training is happening now. People are going into the workforce. So as you're doing projects, whether it's solar panels or any sort of energy efficiency sort of project, look for contractors who are hiring these people. That's really important that we support this effort for equitable justice. Thanks.
Thanks. Give it to Vera. Okay, and then the young lady here had a comment from Cub.
Oh, sure, or whatever. Can everybody see me? Yeah. Hi, I don't want to keep everyone. My name is Kate York. I'm from Citizens Utility Board. If you're unfamiliar with us, we are a utility watchdog in Illinois. We're a nonprofit consumer advocate. I just wanted, first of all, I wanted to ask for the person with the bolt, are you on hourly pricing? Are you on ComEd's hourly pricing program? Oh, so it's municipal.
We're sorry.
Yeah, so maybe not.
We're working on it, though.
Yeah, that would be great to have real-time pricing in Naperville. That's the next step. So I just wanted to talk to people. It's been great to talk about everything that congregations can do. On the residential level, if anyone is interested in getting solar panels on their home, the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, in partnership with CUB, in partnership with numerous other community organizations in Cook, DuPage, Kane, and Will counties, are right now working on a solar group buy. And so that means that if you are interested in getting solar panels on your home and you live in one of those counties, you could be seeing a 9 to 12% reduction on the cost of getting solar on your home because everyone's pooling their resources to negotiate a better price. So we're going to be doing solar power hours in the area. Vera's been helping out with organizing some of those. I know we have one coming up in Elgin, April 22nd. We have one in Downers Grove, June 3rd. One in Elgin again, June 8th, all kinds of stuff. You can find more information on www.solarizedchicagoland.com. Is it com? I always forget.
Or
.com. And I have cards that say this. You know, talk to Vera, talk to me, whatever, if you are interested in that and are unfamiliar with that. This is to incentivize solar on top of federal tax credits, on top of the state incentives that came out of FEJA, so it's getting a better discount. So, and on top of net metering as well from your utility, if your utility allows that, which Naperville does.
Yeah, we'll try to put those solar energy hour events out in the, this is going to be a mammoth email that we're sending to y'all. Lots of good information. Yeah, we'll try to break it into sensible parts. So Kathy Franke, you going to do our last question?
I have a question for the gal from CUB about the, so I know FEJA set aside resources for community solar also, and I'm wondering if you guys are getting involved in that, because I happen to be a person who has a house with too much shade on it, so there is no opportunity for me to get solar on my house. But I would like to be a part of a community solar project, and I'm wondering if you guys are getting involved in that, and I know there's it's addressed with FEJA also.
So I also wanted to say I have CJA fact sheets too, if anyone's interested in a fact sheet on the new legislation, in addition to signing those awesome postcards.
Thank you for bringing that.
Yeah, no problem. So that's one thing. So to address FEJA, so the community solar has been kind of a process since the legislation was passed in 2016. The Illinois Power Agency, which is overseeing the approval of which developers get what incentives from FEJA, launched their lottery to see which developers would get incentives for community solar in January. They extended the deadline. I am actually not totally sure of the status on that. Does anyone happen to know the IPA lottery?
Jeff might.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so just really quickly, CUB also has a website, it's called www.solarinthecommunity.org, where we have updates on that as well, but I'm going to let you speak to specifics.
Yeah, I think it's around April 10th or so, there'll be a lottery, because most of the proposed projects will not have they will not be able to access the state incentives. So those projects won't go forward this year, but a whole bunch will. And we'll know then, and then there'll be a lot of marketing going on. So there'll be a lot of opportunities to shop, and hopefully there'll be a website that people can go to and compare. And then you got to look at contracts and decide what makes sense to you, and you got to make sure you understand it before you sign it, et cetera. And I hope CUB will help with a public education piece on that just to protect the consumer, to make sure it makes sense to them. Yeah.
One more addition about that too, from a residential perspective, on community solar, we're really hoping the whole idea is for people to see savings. That's the idea. So we're going to be interested in seeing some of these contracts as they do go live from developers once they have built their projects, which is probably going to be over the course of this year. So subscriptions probably won't be available till next year, we're thinking. And when subscriptions do become available, we definitely want to make sure consumers are protected. The Illinois Power Agency has actually been really great about consumer protections. They're really concerned about false marketing. They have a lot of protections in the regulations for developers already put in place. And any developer that's receiving these state incentives from FEJA for community solar, any installer that's receiving the state incentives from FEJA for residential solar, has to have certain things that they comply with in order to get those incentives. So that's great consumer protections going on there. CUB's concern for people getting rooftop solar is to make sure that they're getting the biggest bang for their buck. So it's different when it comes to a congregation because you're dealing with not getting federal tax credits, and so you're going to have to figure out what's right for your congregation in terms of how to finance it. But from a residential perspective, if it is possible to finance your panels, and that wouldn't apply obviously if your house isn't suitable for solar, but if your house is suitable for solar, it's generally much more cost effective to get a loan. If you do get locked into a lease for your rooftop solar, you're probably going to be paying substantially more, and you're not going to be able to pay, you're going to be locked into usually a 20-year lease term. And so from a consumer perspective, we like to see people save more, we like people to get the state incentives, we like people to get the federal incentives, which you're not eligible as a resident for if you get a lease. So that's just something to keep in mind on a residential perspective. So just want to plug that there.
So we're going to wrap it up for you. Thank you. I wanted to tell you, first of all, thank you, Susan and the DuPage UU, for hosting us here today and offering this lovely, lovely setting. Thank you so very much to our presenters for your wealth of information, for your inspiring comments. And, you know, really, most of all, I am so grateful to each of you for giving up your time to be here and to help be this conduit of information sharing within this room and beyond the walls. So thank you so much for your efforts. Make sure you've signed in so you get information in the future, and visit the tables on your way out. Thank you.